Do you remember the first fight that you got into, and at what age was the fight?
I remember that I was like 5 years old, and I was getting picked on by the neighbor kids, and my dad was in the Marines, and he just got tired of me coming home crying and stuff, and I used to have to get my head shaved every week by Jim Montgomery, and Jim was starting a boxing club, and asked my dad if I'd be interested in joining, and my dad thought it would be a good way to get me, keep from getting beat up and picked on. So, 5 years old, I remember getting beat up a couple times. I mean, once I started fighting, they stopped picking on me, and, I never really liked bullies. I always despised bullies, and because, they had picked on me when I was a kid, and so, after I started fighting, they left me alone. It was nice.
When you look back at your amateur fights, you estimate you fought roughly 320 amateur fights and won 300. What made you so dominant?
I was, didn't like losing, and, I had good training, and Jim Montgomery and Art Grip were the coaches, and we had a good team. I mean, we were right up there with Tacoma, who had, Armstrong, Seals, Lockridge, Bumpus, all the, guys that were, went on to be, big pros, and, we could hold our own with them, and, so I'd go into every tournament thinking that, I was going to win, and, that's how my mindset was.
Well, I don't think a lot of people know this about you, but that you won a bronze at the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
At 19 years old. Was it at some point an Olympic dream of yours?
No, I just I'd been out, I quit fighting from the time I was like 13 to the time I was 18. And I just got burned out on it. I mean, I started fighting when I was 5 years old, and, we were fighting all the time. And, I just got to the point where I got tired of it, and I quit. So that just happened to be one of my first fights back. It was the Olympic trials in Spokane. And I remember the first round of the first fight, the bell rang, and he hit me, broke my nose, and I fought 2 more fights with a broken nose, and I couldn't breathe, and I ended up losing to the guy that won the gold, and I decided then that I wanted to go pro.
Yeah, at that point, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was the professional fighting is so much different than amateur. I mean, the pace slows down. You can, you're able to not just, with an amateur, it's just go out there and just, all out, balls out, just throwing punches as many as you can, and, and just trying to win the fight. But with pros, you can slow down. It's, more tactical. So I really enjoyed it.
And before you got to that point, though, didn't you go up to Alaska, and was that between the Olympic trials and your decision to go pro?
Yeah, my sister was moving to Alaska, and there was a guy that had a truck that needed driven up there, so I ended up driving it up there, and I got up there and I lived there for a couple of years, and my buddy took me to the bar one night, and they had those tough guy fights, and it was basically you just walk up and they ask you, what do you weigh, and you'd tell them, and then the other guy, they'd ask him what he weighs, and then so they ended up going, well, you guys want to fight, and you'd look at the guy and size him up and say yeah. So I ended up fighting up there, and they hated me because I was from the lower 48. I was beating all the local guys, and they just hated me. So
you're beating some big dudes, though.
Yeah, I was fighting. Well, everybody I fought was at least 20 pounds heavier than me, because I couldn't get in. There wasn't many people that weighed 135, 140. So I was giving up 20 pounds every fight usually. But the biggest guy that I fought was 210, 215, and his name was the Yukon Crusher, and he was like 65-2, and they kept saying, oh, he's gonna punch holes in you, you're gonna look like Swiss cheese, and You know, and I said, well, I kept telling him, well, he can't hit what he can't see. And they thought, oh, you're going to run, huh? So I went out there and I stood toe-to-toe with the guy. And just by the second round, he was dead tired. And all he could do is lay on the ropes and let me beat on him or him quit. So I fought 24 of those. And, you know, and I decided that, you know, one of the guys that I fought, he was 2 years before that, he was number 7 or 8 in the world as a featherweight. His name was Noel Arriscato, and I beat him for the Alaska lightweight title. And you know, and after I beat him pretty handily, I decided that, you know, I'm gonna try this, and I decided to move back to Washington and turn pro.
Now in the tough man competition, you have gloves, the heavier gloves. Like, what's the difference there?
It's just you're wearing 16-ounce gloves, no headgear. Yeah, you're basically fighting, you know, the guy that they had, you know, sized you up with. And it was just big gloves, and that was about it.
Okay, so how often did you fight in the tough man up there?
Once a week usually, but after a while there was nobody they'd fight me. You know, they didn't want to fight me after, you know, 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks. Because when I went in there, I told them, you know, I knew that if I told them that I had some fights, they were going to match me tough. So I told them that I hadn't had any fights. And then the next week I went back after the first week. Oh, yeah, there's a guy that's never had any fights. Sure. And, you know, so they matched me pretty tough the next fight. And, you know, so I beat him. And, yeah, it was one of those things where they kept trying to get me knocked off because they didn't like me. I was beating the I was from the lower 48 beating the local guys, and they didn't like it.
Yeah, but you're 135. You're beating guys that are much bigger than you, and you didn't lose a fight up there. Is that right?
No, I was 24-0, and yeah, I took off fighting pro down here. And my first fight was 10 rounds. My third fight, I went 10 rounds, and you know, that's unheard of these days.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. When you fought up there, give me the timeline. So you're in Alaska. You're fighting tough man for how many years?
I fought there 2 years. I lived there from 1980 to 82, and then I moved back to Washington, and I think I turned pro in 83, and then
you become kind of Auburn's favorite son at that point.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you got, if I understand it correctly, you won the IBF lightweight title in 1986, and your first title defense was against Vinny Pazienza. Your first title defense you lost, but you're still probably pretty bitter about that, huh?
Well, I'm not happy about it, but yeah, he knows he lost, and I know he lost, and you know, it was in his hometown, and you know, I wasn't happy about it, but I was the only one out of Camacho and Edwin Rosario that would take the fight, and you know, he was with Dubas, and they had it pretty much, you know, set up to where he wasn't, you know, unless I knocked him out, he was going to win the fight. And, you know, I mean, I still see him, and, you know, I talk to him once in a while online, and, you know, we still go at it.
Do you still not like him, and he does not like you? Is there still stuff like that going on?
Pretty much. Yeah, he's East Coast, I'm West Coast. So,
yeah.
You know, I just, you know, it's, you know, he seems to think that he beat me, and he knows that, you know, or I know that he didn't. So, you know, it's still, yeah, we still do it, you know, go at it after 30 years. And
well, Lou Duva was his trainer, right?
Yeah, Lou
And didn't
Duva.
he make some crack before the fight that only belt you were going to be wearing was his?
Yeah, and then I just said, no, I don't think so, Lou. You know, you can tow a car with your belt. And, you know, and I just went into that fight, you know, and I thought I was going to knock him out. I really did. And, you know, he surprised me with how tough he was, because I just, you know, I gave him a good beating. But, you know, in the second fight, I just threw more jabs and was in a lot better shape the second fight, you know, because the first fight was Vinny, you know, I wasn't sure, you know, about the 15 rounds. I mean, you know, I'd went 15 rounds once before with Jimmy Paul. But, you know, I had, you know, I was, you know, skeptical of going to 15 rounds and being in great shape for it.
So that's how the rivalry developed. You fought Pazienza, what, 3 times?
3 times.
And then you beat him twice?
Technically, I beat him twice, but you know, on paper, he got 2 and I got 1.
Okay.
You know, but
did they all go the distance?
Yeah, we went 40 rounds.
40
rounds. 2
rounds.
15-rounders and a 10-rounder.
Okay. You know, back then there were 15-round fights. as opposed to the 12 rounders nowadays. How much did you feel those last 3 rounds as a fighter?
Oh, it's big time. It's huge. Because in the 12th round rolls around, and most of the fighters, nowadays, that's the last round. But, back then, it was 12th round. You still had 9 minutes to go after the 12th round. And you're just thinking, oh, man. There's been a few times that, I was, happy that, that we had 3 more rounds to go. But there was a few times that I'm just going, oh, man, 9 more minutes. Ooh. And that's the championship rounds. That's, the way it should be.
Well, you admit in the second fight with Pazienza that you got in better shape for that fight, huh?
Well, I was in a lot better shape. I was doing cardio. I got in with this doctor down there, and he had got me in the best shape that I ever been in. And and there's just I wasn't even breathing hard in about the 15th round. I could have probably went 15 more rounds. I was in that good a shape.
You fought some big names, Greg. I mean, you fought. In 1989, you lost a unanimous decision to Pernell Whitaker, but unanimous decision. I mean, you went the distance with Pernell Whitaker, and you called him the best fighter you ever faced.
Yeah, he was. He was slick. I mean, that guy. Southpaws are tough because the fact that everything you've been taught as a fighter goes out the window because the fact that jab doesn't usually work. It's right hands and left hooks, and you keeping your left foot outside of his right foot and controlling him to make him go to the right hand, and there's just a lot more that goes involved in that goes into it. And when you're fighting a smart southpaw, that's a nightmare. It just and he was one of those guys that would bend down and give you such a little target. He was slick. That guy was hard to hit. Definitely by far the best fighter I'd ever fought.
At that point, when you fought him, where were you ranked as a contender?
Well, I was the champion. I was the IBF champion, and I was like number 3. I think it was Camacho, Rosario, and me. That's how they rated it, because Camacho was a WBC champion, I think, and Rosario was a WBA champion, and I was the IBF. So they had me number 3 behind, Camacho and Rosario.
All right, so let's get to Camacho. 1991, you fight Camacho for the WBO Super Lightweight title, I think it was. He was 38-0 at the time, and you pull the upset. That was a huge moment in your life.
Yeah, it was. I had studied him a lot, and I knew that Hector only liked to fight a minute of each round. So my goal was to go out there and fight him 3 minutes of every round, make him work 3 minutes, and because the fact that he used to get tired, and he's going to get tired quicker if I just keep forcing him to fight. And yeah, by the 6th round, I think he was getting tired. I could hear him breathing hard. I was hitting him to the belly, and I could hear him wincing and stuff. And so I just went on. I was going after him, and he was, he was a tough guy to fight too. He was a southpaw. He was almost as slick as Whitaker, but my goal was just to pressure him and make him fight 3 minutes of every round. And it worked because of the fact that he did get tired, and then I was able to come on and just keep pushing him, forcing him to fight, and and it ended up costing him because they gave me the decision. And I clearly thought I won the fight. And I even thought I won the second fight more so. And I think he did too because he left the ring, and they had to talk him into getting back into the ring, and yeah, I just wanted to show that I could still fight.
Did you try and get inside his head? Was that part of your game?
Yeah, I was talking to him the whole fight, calling him names. I just, was forcing him to fight me, and he didn't want to, because he's not that kind of fighter. He's a slick fighter. He's the kind of guy jab, just pot shots, 3 or 4 shots, and then he'd move, and he wasn't the one. He wasn't one to stand there and trade punches with you. And when I fought him, I forced him to to fight me, to stand there and just keep trading punches, because he got tired and he wasn't able to move, and I wasn't letting him run. So it ended up working out to my favor. I had sparred with him in Alaska when I was up there. He was fighting up there in, I think, 82. And, they wanted him to spar somebody and, get some publicity for the fight coming up. So they had asked me. And I said, sure. And they were going to pay me. They paid me $100 a round. And I was going to spar him once on Friday night, and then twice Saturday, and these were going to be in front of the audiences and the newspaper people and stuff. So the first day, Friday, we were sparring, and he started coming out dropping bombs and stuff. So I started dropping bombs back, and bloodied his nose and his mouth, and and then all of a sudden they'd call me and tell me, oh yeah, Hector's got to leave town tonight. He can't spar tomorrow. So then I ended up seeing him out there, at the Great Alaskan Bush Company later that night. And I was talking to him. I thought you were leaving, So I kind of got in his head, for the fight, because I reminded him of who I was and where we had met. And all of a sudden he's thinking, man, I remember this crazy guy. And and so I just talked to him the whole fight and tried to get in his head, because fighting is, I think 40% psychological and 60% physical. So yeah, I just talked to him the whole time, tried to get in his mind, and and it worked. I was I got him to a point where he got so frustrated that in the 12th round they took a point away from him because he tried to hit me before the they said you had to touch gloves. Well, I know the rule. You don't have to touch gloves. You only have to touch gloves in the first round. That's the rule. So, Carlos Padilla asked us to touch gloves, and I said, no, I don't want to touch gloves with him. And he kept saying, touch gloves, and, I just, no, I don't want to touch him. And that's when he got frustrated and he tried to sucker punch me. And they ended up taking a point away from him. And they say, well, that's why you won the fight. Well, it doesn't matter how I won. But in the second fight, I got him to take a point away too, because, I had frustrated him so much that, he just got to the point where, he was driving him out of his mind. So
after that fight, you tested positive for marijuana.
Yeah.
So, and that was, I think you called that one quite a big embarrassment. Like for you?
Oh, it was. It wasn't a performance-enhancing drug, but it was still, illegal, and, it cost me $25,000. I went in front of the commission, and I told them, they thought I was going to lie and, tell them that, the secondhand smoke, and, I just went in there. I said, yeah, I've smoked pot since I was, 12 years old, 13 years old, I've been getting away with it. And I'm sorry, I won't do it again. And so they fined me and let me, because I had a rematch with Camacho scheduled, and it was like 3 months away. And normally they suspend you for 6 months, and I went in there and told the truth, and they ended up giving me just a fine, no 6 month suspension, because I was truthful with them. So,
why did you fight him? Why did you fight him so fast after, so quickly after you had fought him once? You fought him in the next 3 months.
Yeah, well, I just, I wanted to, strike while the iron was hot, and I thought that, I was going to do the same thing to him again. I thought I was going to win, and I didn't think there was going to be any doubt. But obviously there was, a little controversy in the second fight. And, they ended up giving it to him because he was scheduled. They were talking, they were all before the first fight. They were talking about Battle of the Undefeateds, him and Chavez, and Chavez was like 85-0, and Camacho was 38-0, and they were talking about having those two fight in the Battle of the Undefeateds because Mexicans don't like Puerto Ricans, and Puerto Ricans hate Mexicans. So, and that was, that was the big fight that they were plugging for. But I ended up screwing that up because I beat him. And then Don King was trying to, get me to, get it to where Camacho wasn't, they weren't going to put the loss on Camacho because I tested positive for marijuana. And the commission said no, he still won the fight. Camacho lost, and so they couldn't promote Battle of the Undefeateds anymore.
All right, so in the second fight, you guys, this is what you talked about a little bit earlier, but they took a point away from him in the second fight too, like when you were taunting and laughing.
10th round, I kept taunting him and talking to him. He couldn't hit me, he was jabbing and he'd throw that left hand and he kept missing with it, and I was laughing at him, I was talking to him, no, you can't hit me, and it just frustrated him so bad, he ended up, they ended up taking the point away from him in the 10th round, I think it was.
Yeah, and then, but again, he walks out, like he thought he lost.
Well, yeah, sure he thought he lost, because he did lose, and then they ended up giving it to him, but, and it was Dan Duba who talked him into getting back in the ring. If they watch the fight, you can see him, clearly after the fight, he got frustrated and he left the ring because he felt in his heart that he lost the fight. Well, Dan Duba, I'm sure, went and told him, hey, we got the judges, don't worry about it. And ended up getting back in the ring, and they gave him the decision. And, and I just...
So was he actually physically out of the ring and like...
Yeah, he was almost to his dressing room.
Really?
When they had talked him into getting back in the ring.
How does that happen? How do they let him get back in the ring at that point? I feel like, hey, the fight's over.
Well, that's... Yeah.
Is that another big of the controversies in your career?
Yeah, he knows that, he knew that he lost the fight, and I knew that he lost the fight, but... you don't leave the ring when you win the fight, or you think you won the fight. You leave the ring because you're pissed off and you knew you lost the fight. So that's what happened, and they ended up talking him back in the ring, and he ended up getting a decision.
So technically, in your mind, you beat Hector Macho Camacho twice. Like, you won both those fights.
Yeah, technically, I feel I won both fights.
Yeah. All right, 92, you beat Ray Mancini, and he was a big name back then, but he kind of came out of retirement, I believe, for that fight with you. And,
he had fought Camacho before that. He came out of retirement, and he fought Camacho the first fight. Well, they thought he beat Camacho. And then, so then they ended up wanting to fight me because, I was the biggest name out there that he thought he could beat.
So he came after you.
Yeah, and he was fighting, or he was acting. He was an actor. And like I told him, I said, well, this is the best acting job Ray's ever done, act like he's going to beat me. He ain't going to beat me. I said, the only reason he's fighting is he can't get a job acting. So
didn't you call him like a starving actor or something like that?
Yeah, I said, he kept talking about how he's going to beat me. Well, I said, hey, we're both getting $500,000. Let's just make it winner take all. So I forced him. I kept on him. I said, well, that's, you don't have the confidence to make it double or nothing. Let's, how about $100,000? No, how about $50,000? You see, you're not even confident in yourself about $50,000. So I ended up getting him to bet $50,000. So
you got him to bet $50,000 of what, the purse?
Yeah, he was getting $500,000. I was getting $500,000, and so I had the promoter had ended up writing a check for the winner was going to get $550, and the loser gets $450.
Okay.
So yeah, I ended up, goating him into $50,000.
So you got an extra $50,000 out of Ray Mancini. I've never heard that story.
Yeah.
So you were willing to go winner take all in that bout, though.
Oh yeah, I was confident. I was confident that I was going to beat him. I thought I would have beat him back in the '80s when he was, high on his game.
Yeah.
But
did you knock him into retirement? Was that it for him?
Yeah, that was it. I hit him with a big shot, and he ended up saying that was the hardest he ever been hit.
Really?
Yeah, and I end up being pretty good friends with Livingston Bramble. He lives in Vegas, so every time I go to Vegas, I call him up and we get together. And he was, we always talk, and he's always, "I kicked your ass," and I'm just, "Nah, I don't think so, buddy." So yeah, we were going at it, but I was telling him, I knocked out Mancini. I said, "You couldn't do that." And he's, "Oh, I did. It just took me more rounds," and so we end up, getting at each other. But yeah, he's a great guy.
All right, 1993 is your last big name fight against Julio Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
And at that point, he was 84-0. So you had Camacho at undefeated at 38-0. You had Chavez, he was 84-0 going into that thing. When you look at those numbers alone, were you don't get intimidated by anybody, but you had to look at those numbers and go, "Holy cow."
Yeah, I knew that he'd fought some good fighters in there, but I knew that he'd fought a bunch of Tijuana cab drivers too. I knew that a lot of the guys that he had fought weren't they were just guys that were on the street, and the promoter, "Hey, you want to make a few bucks? You want to get knocked out?" So I knew that if a few of the guys that he fought were like that. So I wasn't intimidated, but I just wish that it would have been at a better time, because that was when I was going through an ugly divorce, and I just didn't train. And I know if I would have trained and I would have been in great shape, I would have won that fight. Because I think I could have outboxed him. I really do, but it didn't work out that way. I wasn't in good shape, and he ended up kicking my ass pretty good.
Why weren't you, like, when you had a guy of that caliber and a fight of that magnitude, why didn't you get yourself into a position where you could give this guy everything you had?
Because I was stupid. I was just, I was heartbroken over, the woman I loved and my childhood sweetheart. We were going through a divorce, and, it was just a bad time. It was probably one of the lowest point of my life, and and I just didn't care, and it's the only fight now that I regret. Out of all the fights that I had, it's the only regret I have right now is not being in top shape for that fight. But I can't do anything about it. I can't go back. But if I could, that would be the one that I would fix.
Physically and mentally.
Oh, physically and mentally. I knew that, I could hold my own with him, but, in the kind of shape that I was in, fighting at altitude in Mexico City, I had to go in there in tip-top shape, and I wasn't. And, it bothers me to this day.
How old were you when you took that fight?
I was 33.
So you're still in it. You're still in a prime age to do some damage. Like, it wasn't like you were some washed up.
No, I was still a healthy young fighter.
You talk about that Tijuana cab driver line. That thing got played up huge, and he really did not like you.
No, he didn't. He still don't like me. He won't shake my hand. I've seen him at a few fights in Vegas, where they call out the fighters and they bring them up to the ring. Well, and I'm usually one of the last guys they call up, and so you'll go up there and you'll shake all these ex-champions' hands and stuff, and there's been 5 or 6 times that he just won't touch my hand. He won't shake my hand. He don't like me at all.
And you just let that go? You don't say anything?
Yeah, I just tell him, fuck you.
Yeah?
I got, there's a lot of guys that I don't like that when I was fighting back then, but, it's over and done with now, and, I don't hold no grudges against any of them.
Who, you say guys you didn't like back then. Was there a fighter that you did like a guy, an opponent you took on and said, "Man, I like this dude. He's a good dude"?
No.
No, okay, because you really can't have that mentality.
No, yeah, you got to be, because he's in there trying to take what you earned, and, he's trying to take away from you something, and, and you're trying to take from him, so it's, fighting is, it's such a hard business. You know, I mean, you'll get to a point. Well, like you're getting the top 10, and you get to a point where, you lose a fight, you end up going back, you're slipping back to the top 20 or top 25. Well, it's going to take you 2 or 3 fights or one big fight to get back in the top 10. So you lose a lot of ground, and it's just, it's tough.
Was Chavez, was that your biggest payday?
No, the Camacho fight was.
The second one?
Yeah, the second fight, that was 1.2, and the Chavez fight was $950,000. But I had an idiot for a manager. It'd take an extra $5,000 or so for me to fight in their hometown, and it got to a point where I was champion, and I wanted to fight in my hometown. I mean.
How much of that money do you get to keep? Like, if someone says, "Oh man, you made $1 million,"
50
like, what do you
cents on
get?
a dollar.
So about half of it.
Yeah. You're paying your trainers and all the people you work with, and people come out of the woodwork. Oh, I went to kindergarten with you. Remember me? And I'm just, no. And they get a little offended when, I don't remember them, but, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about regrets, it was interesting to say that the Chavez fight was probably your biggest regret in boxing.
Oh.
Was there any other regrets for you as you look back at your career?
Not really. I mean, I pretty much did what I wanted to do and did it my way, and but yeah, just the Chavez fight was my biggest regret because especially the Spanish fans now, that's all they really remember me for, and and it bothers me because of the fact that I was a lot better fighter than what I showed them in the Chavez fight, and and I know that if I was in the shape that I should have been in, it would have been a different story. But
you fought in front of, what, 90,000?
No, I was 133,000.
133,000?
Yeah, it's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest crowd. Azteca Stadium, they were throwing cups of piss on me and bags of feces. And,
really?
Oh yeah.
When you were going into the ring?
When we were walking in the ring, because the ring from the dressing room to the ring was about a 300-yard walk. And I remember Chavez, they took him and he'd come in a helicopter, so he didn't have to fight the crowd and stuff. But yeah, I mean, they were trying to poke me with these Mexican flags that had the sticks on them they were holding.
Wow.
It was brutal. And yeah, it was like a 300-yard walk from the dressing room to the ring. And they were saying all kinds of stuff and throwing all kinds of. They were throwing those pesos at us, and the pesos are like a silver dollar. Mm. And they were throwing them from the third level, and it was brutal.
Was it a tight tunnel of people that you were walking through?
No, it was just a big open field. I mean, it was the soccer field, and then you had just you had the walkway or the aisleways to get to the ring, and it was just. Yeah, they were, throwing all kinds of stuff at us. They were, you had to walk through this maze of people. It was brutal. It was a long walk, and
did you get hit with anything?
I didn't, but my trainers did, and one of them was, "Man, you see that Mexican throw that beer on me?" And I go, "You ever seen a Mexican waste a beer?" I go, "That's a cup of piss, buddy."
Oh.
Yeah, so yeah, it wasn't a good time.
Oh man, well, man, your career has been. Where'd you get the name the Mutt anyway?
My dad, something he put on me. I was a little kid, I was little, and I guess I was the little mutt. So, it was one of those things where my dad kind of strapped it on me. But, when I moved to Vegas, I tried to get away from that. But, there was still some people that knew me as Mutt. And, and after a while, I was proud of it. I didn't bother me.
Hey, man, when I first got to follow you, and I mean, it was Greg the Mutt Haugen. I mean, it was like, the Mutt was always associated with you.
Yeah, I'd end up not, using that name. And when I moved to Vegas, I tried to get rid of it, but, I should have used it more, and I didn't have them introduce me in Vegas as the Mutt. So, but yeah, I mean, I had that nickname since I was 4 or 5 years old.
You know, there's a lot of people that remember you and remember your fights. Do you, when you go around town and people find out who you are, because you look different today than you did when you were in the ring, but do people come up to you still?
Oh yeah, I mean, once they hear who I am or they recognize me, you know, it's, you know, they want to talk, you know, boxing, and you know, it's not as much now as it used to be, but you know, it doesn't bother me. I mean, you know, I that's something that goes with the territory. I mean, I ended up, you know, being, you know, famous for something that, you know, because you know, once you get on TV, people think, wow, you've been on TV, man. What? I'm just, yeah. So, and so, you know, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that still recognize me, and you know, and it's nice once in a while, but you know, it does become a pain in the butt.
Yeah, that's kind of fun though, man. Like when you look back at your career and you know, the things that you accomplished, I mean, you've got to pat yourself on the back. I mean,
yeah,
come on,
I mean,
you fought some big names.
Yeah, there was, you know, I mean, considering they didn't think I had a chance when I moved down to Vegas, there was a lot of people skeptical about, you know, they were thinking that I got hit too much, and you know, but I was pretty hard to hit. I had pretty good defense, I thought, and you know, so yeah, I look back now and I think, you know, geez, it was fun.
Yeah, man. It was fun for a lot of fans watching you. Do you think boxing will ever come back to where it was in the 80s and you know, 70s and 80s?
No.
No?
Not with the MMA and stuff, and you know, and the commissions, you know, I just think, you know, the commissions are all different. I mean, every state's got a different, you know, rules and regulations, and you know, they need to have there needs to be one federal rules, and you know, and you know, I just, you know, don't see it happening. So you know, I wish they'd all get on the same page, and you know, and have these people, you know, all doing the same thing and going by the same rules, you know, and but until then, it's, you know, it's taken a good wallop upside its head, you know, because there's a lot of people, oh, boxing's dead, it sucks, and you know, and some of the, you know, there's not a Mike Tyson around now, or you know, it's hard, you know, there's not a lot of big name fighters out there right now.
It is funny and interesting how one big name can make a difference.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, one name can sell the show, you know, and you know, that's the thing about me. When I fought, you know, I could sell tickets. People like to watch me fight, so you know, they knew that when they paid to see me fight, they were going to get their money's worth. You know, and I just, you know, I didn't come to look fancy or pretty. I came to win, and I came at you, and you're going to kick my butt or I'm going to kick yours. You know, and that's the way it was.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, man, it was a fantastic career, and I'm really happy that we had a chance here to kind of revisit everything that you accomplished and hear some of the stories and experiences, man. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
I appreciate that.